If you have any MAGAs in your life, as most people do, you're likely going to hear from them that the video we're about to watch is not concerning because Trump, like God, has a plan. He has a plan for us all, and he works in mysterious ways. And that there's not going to be the pain that Trump is promising. And what I want to do in this segment, after going through some major updates with the goings on of the Trump administration over the last few hours, what I want to do is dive into not just what Trump's been doing, but why, so that just yourself, but then also those in your life who might be thinking, no, I'm hearing from MAGA media that Trump's getting all these big wins, that you could demonstrate to them, no, there's a game being played and it's incredibly destructive. Before getting into that, here's Trump saying something that, given what he ran on and the promises he made Americans, is shocking and absurd. While we go through this segment, a lot jam-packed in it to go through, so please do stick around for it and click the subscribe button if you're not yet.
We don't need them for energy. We have more energy than they do. We don't need them for energy. So I say, why are we doing this? Why are we willing to lose between $100 billion and $200 billion a year? We don't need them. As a state, it's different. As a state, it's much different. And there are no tariffs. So I'd love to see that, but some people say that would be a long shot. If people wanted to play the game right, it would be 100% certain that they'd become a state. But a lot of people don't like to play the game because they don't have a threshold of pain. And there would be some pain, but not a lot. The pain would be really there. So we're going to meet again by phone at 3 o'clock, and we'll let you know what it is.
So that's him saying something absolutely disastrous, which is that really, if he had to admit it, his ultimate goal is, regardless of the threshold of pain, making Canada the 51st state. Not going to happen. So the pain's not going to be worth it, even if we said we're okay with that equation, because it's not going to happen. But he's saying, if we really played this game right, he's admitting there's a game being played with all the tariff threats and all the economic instability. And ultimately, with Canada, his wish would be, regardless of the pain that would come with it, trying to leverage them into becoming, into doing something they're not going to do, is the way that I should word it. And when he says the threshold of pain, he's saying past presidents haven't been willing to undergo such pain, but maybe I'll be willing to. But we're the ones who feel the pain. He's not. His little cushy life isn't. We're the ones who will feel the pain. When the prices skyrocket, we're the ones. We're going to look at China's reaction in a second and what they're doing in response. That hitting us close to home, we're going to feel the pain for a delusional goal that Trump has. He's admitted this now multiple times.
No, I'm not concerned. We may have short-term a little pain, and people understand that. But long-term, the United States has been ripped off by virtually every country.
Okay, so he's been saying all of that. We've looked at it. We've talked about it. But then he gets on this call with Trudeau, and the outcome is the tariffs are paused for another 30 days. So if you're losing track, understandably, of all this, he imposed on Mexico, Canada, and China these massive tariffs. Then we're going to talk about in a different segment, a Fox News host speculating, even she's realizing why Trump might be backing off of this. And it's not because he's getting amazing concessions. He seems to be scared about what we're sounding the alarm about, which is why it matters for us to sound the alarm, which is that there could be an economic disaster. So then suddenly he pauses for a month on Mexico and pauses for a month on Canada, the tariffs, saying it's because they gave him big, massive, beautiful concessions. We'll talk about that throughout the segment. But first, an update on China. Associated Press reporting China announced retaliatory tariffs on select American imports and an antitrust investigation into Google on Tuesday, just minutes after a sweeping levy on Chinese products imposed by U.S. President Donald Trump took effect. So we will see the impact now from the trade war with China that's ongoing, while there's a pause on the trade war with Canada and Mexico. So I keep bringing up this why. Why is he doing this? Well, there's two options. The first is that a month's going to pass by, he's going to impose the tariffs again, and he really does have a delusional belief that this is a really good economic tool. That slapping this, it's not that any tariffs is bad, that this size on this scope of imports from the countries he's picked, that imposing those is an economic good, and over the long run is going to do us a lot of great stuff, even if there's a lot of pain in the short term, as he's admitting, which should shock his voters, by the way, who time and time again, he said, no, trust me, the tariffs are not going to hurt prices. He kept telling us that up until he actually became president. So that's option one. There's just a temporary pause, they're figuring some stuff out, but they're actually going to do it. But the second one is he's trying to manufacture crises, manufacture situations and problems so that he can solve them and do a victory lap. Sort of manufacturing, fabricating political wins, which is essentially what he's done now in numerous scenarios we're going to go through. We have to see these things not as individual acts, but as a part of a broader game. If option two is what's happening. So let's examine option two. If he understands, as something is just absolutely attacking my eyeball, that his actions are unpopular. Some of the most consequential actions he's taking are unpopular. Those then would be categorized as political losses. Well, that means he needs political wins, but his entire agenda we've been talking about, gutting all these institutions, USAID getting shut down, it appears, which will be catastrophic globally. Freezing federal funds, but then it's not working, but he's trying, and it could harm the well-being of so many Americans' lives. Tax cuts for wealthy folks in the meantime. Well, I thought we were trying to prevent exacerbating the deficit, but now we're exacerbating it further while cutting benefits to working Americans. So he can't just have that as the only thing that's being discussed. So he needs political wins. What do you do when you need a political win? You create a problem, you solve the problem that you created, and you take a victory lap. It's meaningless, and a lot of people have pointed it out. So that's one part of it, and a lot of people have caught on to this. There's memes, I'll show you at the end of the segment, where it's Trump creates a problem, or Trump makes a threat, backs off of it, and then says he did something amazing. But there's a part of it people are missing, which is the destruction that's done in the meantime. Him doing that, him creating a crisis, pretending like he solved it, and then taking a victory lap, there's real destructive outcomes, which is what we need to examine. Starting with, one by one, starting with him posting this. Photo of beautiful water flow that I just opened in California. Today, 1.6 billion gallons, and in 3 days, it will be 5.2 billion gallons. Everybody should be happy about this long-fought victory. I only wish they listened to me 6 years ago. There would have been no fire. So he made up claims about water wasn't flowing from one part of California to another, and if only I had been president and could have leveraged Gavin Newsom to do the thing that I know we should do because I understand water better than all the water experts. He made up this claim about how he could have prevented the wildfires. And that's the crisis he's invented. And then he gets federal officials in California to open up the water flow and solve the problem that he has fabricated. The problem is, it didn't, because he's been wrong the whole time. CBS reports why the water Trump order released in California won't help Los Angeles firefighting. Following the deadly wildfires in Los Angeles in January, President Trump ordered the Army Corps of Engineers to release billions of gallons of water from 2 reservoirs in California's Central Valley, more than 100 miles away from the fire zones. Mr. Trump had claimed that California withheld water supplies that could have made a difference in fighting the flames. California Gavin Newsom and other officials disputed those claims. Now, the water released from the dams is rushing into a dry lake bed in Central Valley, where experts say it can't flow to Southern California and will likely go to waste. Quote, there's absolutely no connection between this water and the water needed for firefighting in LA. There's no physical connection. There's no way to move the water from where it is to the Los Angeles basin. A meaningless but wasteful, and if there wasn't some pushback, flood-inducing action Trump was taking. The farmers in the basin own the water, and that water is stored in these dams in the winter during the rainy season so that farmers can use it in the very hot, long, dry summer season. It's assumed to be a loss. I think even the water managers got only a short bit of notice to say, please don't, you can't do that. That's way too much water. And frankly, had they not talked the Army Corps off the ledge, there would have been serious flooding. It would have been an even bigger problem. So if Trump had gotten his way, because he doesn't understand the water system in California, and they had released this water going to somewhere that can't get to LA, we would have had flooding. And we are experiencing now waste in this water because of Trump's political stunt. But good, he gets to take a victory lap, and MAGA says, see, he's so strong. He's so strong. And then we move on to the next political win that wasn't. He had this dispute with Colombia. We were flying deportees, migrants, to Colombia. Colombia said, no, we're not going to accept that plane because we don't want certain characteristics of your deportations to be accepted here. What were those? We want them to be, quote unquote, dignified. The shackles shouldn't be on, and they shouldn't be coming in a military plane. Something to that effect. Trump goes, they're saying they're not going to accept any migrants, but I'm so strong, so I'm going to slap massive tariffs on Colombia. There's this temporary dispute, 24 hours-ish of this made-up crisis, when in reality, all Colombia was asking for was a change in how the deportations were happening, and Trump did the change. He ended up flying them on a different plane with different circumstances, as was requested, with the quote-unquote dignity that was requested. Colombia then says, okay, we'll keep accepting as we have, just with the certain rules that we are asking. And Trump says, see, I forced them through my threats to accept migrants when they said they wanted. Another political win for Trump that was completely made up. The Washington Post had a piece saying Trump's quick win on Colombia migrant flights may be a loss for the dollar. Threat of financial sanctions may fuel surge for dollar alternative. By threatening Colombia, a close U.S. ally, with the type of financial sanctions previously reserved for U.S. adversaries such as Iran and North Korea, Trump this week inflamed global interest in cultivating alternatives to the dollar, according to analysts and former U.S. officials. His made-up crisis that he solved for a political stunt, in this first instance with water, ended in a waste of water with no benefit to the LA fires and near flooding. His second made-up crisis that he solved for a political stunt, for a made-up political win, is pushing an ally toward strengthening financial opposition to the United States. And then we get to maybe the most absurd, Canada. He paused the tariffs because he was so strong in forcing them into an advantageous position for the United States. Number one, weird, because he says that the tariff policy he proposed, if he's saying tariffs now he only wants to use as negotiating, which is not what he's admitted yet, but they're pretending in the MAGA media space that, no, this is good because he's getting concessions and that's all we really wanted out of these tariffs. Well, that's not what Trump's been saying for years now. He thinks it's a strong economic tool for economic benefits, not political concessions. For U.S. manufacturing, if he releases all the tariffs by the end of this whole debacle, then he's just bending the knee to our argument. But number two reason that this is absurd, I'll get into after this.
Now we've just gotten this announcement from Trudeau himself, who I should note got out ahead of the White House in this. He said he had a good call with Trump. He said that Canada is going to be implementing a $1.3 billion border plan where they talk about reinforcing the border. I should note that's actually something that Trudeau announced and Canada announced back in December, about mid-December. But also in this announcement, Jake, he says that they are going to have frontline personnel working and protecting the border after concerns about fentanyl coming across. And he said that they are going to be appointing a fentanyl czar and that they will list cartels as terrorists and ensure 24/7 eyes on the border. I believe it is the fentanyl czar that is new here, but it's that last sentence, Jake, there at the end is the most important here. He says, proposed tariffs will be paused for at least 30 days while we work together.
So now, and we're going to, as I mentioned before, look at some memes which portray very nicely both President Sheinbaum, Mexico, and Prime Minister Trudeau of Canada. A joke, but on a phone call going, I promised to give Trump what we already promised to give him, and he released the tariffs, and the other person goes, me too. Trump announces Canada has agreed to ensure we have a secure northern border and to finally end the deadly scourge of drugs like fentanyl. A reminder that 0.2% of fentanyl seizures happen at the northern border. So he does blow that out of proportion by a magnitude of much. That have been pouring into our country, killing hundreds of thousands of Americans while destroying their families and communities all across our country. He talks about this border plan. That was already announced. Okay, maybe a fentanyl czar. We're just going to label somebody differently is the one thing he could tout. That whole plan, the border efforts, the coordination, that's all been happening and it was announced and outlined already. But then Trudeau, treating Trump justifiably like a child, goes, what if we do a really big, strong, and Jane, if you'll take that down, I'm going to move on from it. We're going to do a real big, strong, powerful border deal because of you, Mr. Donald. And Trump goes, I'm so strong. When in reality, it's something that was already announced and outlined. And then a couple other little random fentanyls are things that aren't a change at all. Trudeau's saying, I just had a good call with President Trump. Canada's implementing our $1.3 billion border plan and announces the same thing. All right. And let's see, charging forward from there, Canada was able to win in this exchange, at least for a month, by promising things essentially meaningless. The investment in plans not meaningless. Northern border efforts aren't meaningless. But in terms of new concessions they weren't willing to give, but they now are because of Trump's tariff threats, meaningless. Nothing. Zip. Even Laura Ingraham on Fox News, when I think it doesn't seem like he really got anything. Mexico, example 4. Mexico goes, we don't want these tariffs. What? You're violating the deal that you negotiated, the USMCA. What are you talking about? And Trump then gets on a call with them. I think because he started to be afraid of the economic implications. He told us this was a great economic plan, but now he's backing off of it. But needs something to show for. So then he gets the 10,000 National Guard troop promise, something that Biden got in 2021 and didn't have to threaten tariffs at all. Again, a nothing burger. So then why are so many people on the television, on the boob tube, as the oldies call it, believing or advocating a position that this has been masterful negotiating? Well, because it's people like Tim Pool out there saying, Trudeau caved, Trump won, tariffs paused for 30 days. Really? Because we saw with Colombia a lasting damage that could be done. We could have our economic and financial strength undermined as more and more of our allies say, oh, this is too chaotic. We need to ally ourselves differently. Similarly, Canada and Mexico, we've already seen Canadians. There's a sort of nationalist sentiment now saying we should stop buying American products. There was a ban placed for parts of Canada on American liquor. A huge buyer of American liquor. And things being taken off the shelves that are American. That's still present. We've alienated them. So Trump got nothing but harmed our economically beneficial relationship with allies. Surely there's going to be steps taken to not be so financially, economically dependent on us whenever you have Trump swinging his hammer all over the place. All for what? Just like the water, just like the Colombia exchange with Canada and Mexico, it's all for these fake political wins. Things that if he really cared about getting those commitments, most that were already committed to before, he could have just negotiated normally, as we've seen the National Guard example is a perfect one. We've seen past presidents just ask and Mexico go, okay, we don't need to go through this whole tariff thing. But Trump needs that to be the focus so that this isn't. Time magazine reporting, chaos and confusion began to spread through the ranks of USAID, both in Washington, D.C., where there are about 15,000 employees, and abroad, where there are thousands more. And you have just tragic stories of diseases now that won't go treated. Water that won't go clean. Food that won't go served. Time reporting inside the chaos, confusion, and heartbreak of Trump's foreign aid freeze. In a different segment today, we're going to talk about in more specifics, particular stories, because I know to really understand the tragedy, we have to connect it to human lives and human stories. We just don't have enough time in this segment to do that, but we will be relating to a report about Trump shutting down the Department of Education. And then you have a piece out of Public Notes, Trump's mobster media shakedowns. And it talks about how it appears Paramount, the parent company of CBS, it's considering doing what ABC News did, bending the knee to Trump, not wanting his retribution. So we'll just pay a settlement, even though you brought a bogus lawsuit. We don't need to settle. We can beat you in court. Paramount's considering it with the CBS lawsuit that is absolutely ridiculous. Trump's suing CBS over election interference for editing a Kamala Harris interview like they edit all of their interviews, like they edited Trump's 60 Minutes interview. But then you have Meta, Zuckerberg, also settling with Trump, just paying him. It's a payment, which is why they described on Public Notice it as a mobster shakedown, paying him so that they won't get hurt by him. What do I mean? Well, in the case of Paramount, you have, let's see here, with his ascension to the top of the FCC, Brendan Carr, Trump's new FCC commissioner, now controls the fate of the Paramount Skydance merger. He already publicly threatened to nix it over Trump's complaint about the Harris interview. And in case Paramount and other media companies didn't get the hint, Carr also reinstated election coverage complaints against ABC, CBS, and NBC that the FCC had previously dismissed as attempts to weaponize the FCC complaint process. So Trump's new FCC commissioner, who Trump appointed after Brendan Carr had already made clear he will punish these companies for doing things during the election, doing coverage that Trump didn't like, is the way to properly articulate that. And so now Paramount, because they want this Paramount Skydance merger to go through, is going, maybe we'll just settle and pay Trump directly to get this lawsuit to go away. Is it really about getting the lawsuit? Are they really that afraid of the lawsuit? No, they would win the lawsuit. I'm not a legal expert, but I promise that's the case, given how ridiculous Trump's lawsuit is. But what are they afraid of? The FCC commissioner could make it a big headache for them in many ways, make life a big headache for them. Or Trump's previous promises to target all these different companies we're talking about with different types of retribution. For them, it's their business, from a business standpoint, not an American principle standing up for the Constitution standpoint, but their business, the best thing they can do is pay the guy off. Now, it's not actual bribery, but it's bribery through ridiculous settlements for bogus lawsuits. So that's going on. That's freaky. But don't focus on that. Focus on Trump's made up political wins. Don't focus on how people's lives are being upended and foreign aid that literally keeps people alive is being cut off with no notice and no ramp up. Don't focus on how Trump is reportedly considering completely getting rid of the Department of Education that provides necessary funds disproportionately to red states. Don't focus on the fact that he's getting rid of all the people who he feels wronged him at the top of the FBI and DOJ, making us less safe from a law enforcement standpoint, but him feeling like he's getting rid of anyone who's not loyal, achieving that goal. Don't focus on the broader unlawful attempt to impound federal funds, so brazen that a federal judge said, no, I can't let you do that. It's insane. To necessary programs in the name of cutting back on waste, even though they're going to cut government revenue with huge tax cuts. Don't focus on any of that because Trump is a big boy negotiator and he's getting amazing wins. When in reality, he's harming long-standing relationships in ways that could push those countries away from their economic dependence on us, which we benefit from, and we leverage constantly for our own interests. Or the political wins he made up that harm farmers, don't solve the problem, and misunderstand the water system in California. Focus on that. That's more interesting and sexy for him than actually paying attention to systemically and consequentially what's going on. So that's option 2. That's what he's doing. if there's some game being played. Or option one is he genuinely, there is a pause here and he thinks he's getting concessions, but the other world leaders are kind of playing him and just going, hey, we'll give you this. That's a big deal, Don. Big. You're so strong. I'm so scared. And then he's going, yes, I'm getting it, but he's actually going to eventually impose the tariffs as he did on China, and the trade war will continue. So either prices spike and he proceeds with the full-on trade war. We're already going to see the increase in prices because of the China part of it, but if he goes forward on all three countries, we'll really feel it. Or he's trying to leverage meaningless political wins that actually harm U.S. interests domestically and abroad. Now, because that was a heavy segment, let's follow. I know this is a long segment too, but let's end it with some meme. They call them meme, okay? But political cartoons. And Kyle Kalinske has been posting a lot of these. Some of them are from him. Some of them are from other people just sharing different political cartoons that have been made. This is Trump threatening the U.S. economy, threatening to shoot off the head of the U.S. economy, saying, give me what I want or the old man gets it. He thinks he's threatening other countries, but at least from the perspective of Americans, their top concern should be that he's threatening to take down the U.S. economy. This was Alex Cole posting who made this, and it's a hilarious split screen where on the top Trudeau is saying, so I offered him what we've already been doing and he dropped the tariffs. And Scheinbaum says, OMG, same. Embarrassing. Then from Kyle Kalinske again, they brainwashed you, a MAGA person is saying, to someone who says really, and the person with really has one logo, which I guess is the pride flag, and the person who's saying that you've been brainwashed has all of the logos you can imagine. Fox News, their MAGA hat, all sorts of things. You have this summing up what we're going through, which is Trump saying, I make a stupid decision. Something really bad happens. I convince my followers the problem is now magically solved. I reverse my stupid decision. So far, that's what's been taking place. I explained how that could be at least his attempt at a strategic game. And then Musk being portrayed in this one saying, sniff out unelected bureaucrats in government roles and dangerous personal agendas, I should say, with dangerous personal agendas. And then Doge is going around sniffing. Ultimately, Doge finds out that the rear end that should be sniffed, the real unelected bureaucrats in government with a role that represents dangerous personal agendas, is Elon Musk's. Elon Musk's ass is the one that needs to be sniffed out. Hopefully that all made sense to you. That was quite the segment, but it's really important that I don't just bring to you one story at a time, and then it can feel like you're being clobbered by a gazillion crises, but you see how some of these trends connect, and Trump's playing that similar game of creating a problem that's made up, solving it, taking credit for it, and all of that serves to distract people from most consequentially how he's working to hurt their life. Share your thoughts in the comments. If you appreciate the effort that goes into this show, I would appreciate you clicking the join button below.